What does a 13-person K-pop group have to do with an ancient Roman poet? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome to Mythology, looking for connections between the modern and ancient. As long as humans have been writing and singing, human relationships, especially romantic relationships, have been the focus of those poems and songs, and we still see that focus in our music today. This video is the first in a series I'm going to be doing comparing the ancient Roman poet Catullus to modern pop music. I'll rate each comparison, and then at the end, we'll declare which pop album is the modern Catullus. Today, we'll be comparing Catullus's poems to K-pop idol group 17's newest album, Attacca.
저희 이번 앨범 아타카 제목처럼 쉬지 않고 계속해서 연주하라는 뜻을 가지고 있는데요. 저희의 열정을 담은 앨범입니다.
If you've clicked on this video, I'm assuming you know something about Catullus, or you're mostly here for the music, so I'll try and keep the background short. Catullus was born sometime in the 80s BC in northern Italy. He lived and wrote in Rome during the time that Julius Caesar was becoming powerful, but before Caesar was dictator. Catullus is most famous for his love poems to his girl, whom he names Lesbia. And that name Lesbia is actually a reference to the Greek island of Lesbos, which was the home of the ancient poet Sappho, whom Catullus admired and sometimes imitated. For video length and also a more even comparison, in this series I'll be looking at a single album of pop music along with Catullus poems 1 through 11. Poems 1 through 11 include some of Catullus's most read poems, and they also bring up a lot of his common themes. Many people consider that poems 1 through 11 were published together as a collection, an album, if you will. Here's a brief summary of the topics of Catullus 1 through 11. And as we look at these topics, we can see a number of themes coming up. Of course, most famously, we have the love poems. In Catullus 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 11, we see the relationship moving from infatuation into passionate love, and finally heartbreak and then betrayal. Friendship itself is another theme that we see in his dedication to another writer, in 6 and 10 talking about his friends' relationships, his excitement over his best friend returning home, and finally in Catullus 11, his friends who are going to give Lesbia his final message. And the final theme to mention, which is not one we might expect, is actually travel. We see a description of exotic places and travel in Catullus 4, 7, 9, and also 11. I will mention other famous poems of Catullus if it connects to the music, but focusing on these 11 poems will allow us to go more in depth. To see which album is the modern Catullus, I've devised the following rating system. I'll be giving 1 point for a basic connection and 2 points for a close connection in the following categories: lyrical connections to specific lines in Catullus, themes and emotions, sequence, meaning the order of events or emotions from the start to the finish of the album, connections to poems beyond Catullus 1 through 11, and also any general connections to Catullus's attitude or other aspects of his writing. So let's get to the music. The first song on Attacca is To You, which is a sweet song of gratitude towards somebody who has loved and supported you. Catullus's first love poem, poems 2 and 3, give us a very different sense of a relationship. It's clearly the beginning of his relationship with his girl, whereas To You is describing clearly a devoted long-term relationship. I'm going to give 1 point for the general connection to the theme of love. Track 2 is the lead single, Rock With You, and this is a song that first reminded me of Catullus. There's a lot of connections between Rock With You and Catullus Poem 5, which is one of Catullus's most famous. In it, he encourages Lesbia to not care about what other people think. Life is short, and therefore we just have to kiss each other thousands of times. And Rock With You really captures that sort of passionate love, really only focused on your lover.
뭐든지 해주고 싶어 나에게만 있다면 원래 깜빡고 홀로 네가 없다면 난 아무것
with lyrics like
떠오르는 거면 나 없어 나에게만 있어서 원래 깜빡고 세상이 끝나더라도 I wanna run with you.
we get a sense of a time constraint in Rock With You, and that urgency is very much a theme in Catullus 5 as well. There's also a lot of specific lines in Rock With You that connect well to Catullus 5. So for instance, the line, "Won't let them break your heart," might remind us of Catullus urging Lesbia not to care about what other people think, protecting themselves from hurt others might cause them. But my favorite connection is this idea of night, creating a sense of urgency. So in the song, it sounds like this. In Catullus lines 5 through 6, it's actually sort of the reverse. He says, "One eternal night must be slept." For Catullus, the idea is that there's only one life and death is eternal. And here we get the inversion of that. Night itself, the time spent together, is the thing that's short. But the idea is still the same, the urgency of the lover's time. Another thing I love about Rock With You is it's sort of self-aware. We get quotes like this. So the sense of the poet or singer's own role, sort of awareness of their own art, is very Catullan. We see in many places throughout Catullus's poems him reflecting on his own poetry and its role. So I'm going to give 2 points for the very close connection to specific lines in Catullus. I'm going to give 2 additional points for the connection to the themes and emotions, specifically of Catullus 5. 1 point for sequence, because this track is a continuation of the love theme, but it's not an escalation of the love like we see between Catullus 3 and 5. And 2 points for general Catullusness. The next track is Crush, and despite the lyrics claiming that it's complicated, the concept is actually very straightforward. In some ways, the song matches the tone of Catullus Poem 2, showing this initial attraction at the beginning of a relationship. The feelings described in the song, however, seem like they would take place before the first 2 tracks, so that's different from Catullus, where in Catullus's poems to his girl, in each poem their relationship gets closer and closer. Some lines in the song remind me of other Catullus poems. For instance, "You Who No One Can Imitate" reminds me of Catullus 43 or 86, in which Catullus describes other women who are in no way comparable to Lesbia. The song has a number of connections to Catullus. It's significantly different, however. There's a third presence in the poem. In Catullus 2, it's the girl's pet bird. And this third presence sort of steps between the girl and the poet, and we get no sense of anything like that in Crush. I'm giving 1 point for the general connection to infatuation, and also 1 point for the connection to the other poems. After Crush comes the performance team's song, Pong.
제목은 상대방을 향한 마음이 부풀어 오르다 곧 튀어나오고 터질 것 같은 그런 감정을 표현한 곡인데요.
Pong is another great comparison to Catullus 51, which is Catullus's sort of cover or remix, if you will, of a Sappho poem. And in both the Sappho and Catullus poems, the poet is describing their physical reactions to seeing the object of their desire, similar to these lines. In Catullus 51, he says that when he sees Lesbia, his eyes go dark, his ears ring, he can't speak, etc. And in Pong, we get this delightful metaphor of their heart like a balloon about to burst. In both the poem and the song, there's a sense of danger coming from this proximity.
대기권 너머로 커져간 맘 슬슬 터질까봐 조마조마해
After Catullus describes how he feels, he actually concludes the poem by saying that if he has too much free time to hang around Lesbia, it's essentially going to destroy him. In the song, of course, we don't get any real sense of threat. They mention the danger, but the fun sound effects, the tone of the song is very light and playful. And of course, even after repeating Stay Away, we end with this. I'm giving 2 points for the strong connection to Catullus 51. The vocal team's song Imperfect Love is next. And this song is actually a great example of how just because something is a love song doesn't mean that it connects to Catullus's love poems. The first lines of the song actually do include a specific similarity to the idea of happiness and love as sunshine.
이 세상을 행복하게 비춘 햇살이 밤 되면 별이 돼 내게 내려와 세상에 빛나는 것이 정말 궁금하지만 그 속에 내게 너만 소중해.
Similarly, in Catullus 8, he describes the happy times that he spent with his girl as times when bright sun shone. But beyond that, there's not a lot that these have in common. The rest of the song is about trying to improve as a partner in a stable relationship. Catullus does show himself to be the one who's putting in more of the effort in his relationship. For instance, in Catullus 8, he describes their relationship as things that he wanted that she did not want. But we don't really get a sense that he's trying to improve himself in the relationship, nor do we get a sense that the relationship with Lesbia has lasted long enough for there to be some sort of natural evolution of their love. I'll give one additional point for the specific lyrical connection. The hip-hop team's ballad, I Can't Run Away, is a song about a love that is over, but they can't or won't let go of yet.
The more they change, the more they stay the same.
In some ways, the song connects really well to later Catullus poems about Lesbia, like 72, 75, 87, in which Catullus describes feeling sort of trapped in his relationship, in his love for Lesbia. However, in a very significant way, this song is actually the opposite of what Catullus describes. In poem 85, Catullus famously says, I hate and I love, and he describes the feeling as torture. The song, on the other hand, says that the love is too beautiful to leave, and also concludes with this. That's a very un-Catullan statement. However, the song does provide a nice transition in the Attacca album between the positive love songs from the beginning of the album and the heartbreak of the last song, and that's something that we don't get at all from Catullus. I'll give this 1 point for the theme of connection to a lost love, and also 1 additional point for the connections to other poems. This recent single by 17 member Hoshi would make a great comparison with some later Catullus poems where he feels trapped in his love for Lesbia, but I said I was just going to do 1 album, so moving on. If Rock With You was the song that first made me think of Catullus, then this last song, 2-1, really clinched the connection. It makes a great comparison with both Catullus poems 8 and 11. In fact, the very first line of the song reminds me of Catullus 11, The poem itself is a message Catullus is sending through his friends to Lesbia.
You listen to this song cause I'm doing right just fine. I'm doing alright.
Both the poem and the song really want their ex-lover to know that they are doing okay without them. In the final two stanzas of 11, Catullus tells Lesbia to enjoy her other lovers and not look back on their love, which she destroyed. We hear echoes of this through the song.
2 minus 1, I can't see you're doing good without me, baby. 2 minus 1, I'm doing great myself, but you know I am.
Catullus 11 declares that their love is over. In Catullus 8, he's still struggling with the breakup and his feelings for Lesbia, and that's very similar to what we see in the song as well. In fact, we can match up basically everything in Catullus 8 to part of the song. Catullus 8 opens with the poet telling himself to admit that things are over and stop being a fool.
I can't get you out of my head, yeah. Gotta get you out of my head, yeah. How can you be so far when
In lines 3 through 8, Catullus then reminisces about how great things were when he and the girl were together.
We used to be best friends. I remember you said you can be yourself when I'm around.
Then in lines 9 through 13, Catullus finally admits that things are over, tells himself to be strong and not chase after somebody who doesn't want him.
It didn't really matter. All the feelings we had were not much to you at all. But I moved on, so keep your 2 cents. Sympathy, subtraction.
The best part of the comparison, however, is how they both end. In Catullus 8, he ends with this list of questions which are supposed to be threats for the girl. Oh, who will think you're beautiful? Who will love you? Who will kiss you now? But as he continues to ask her these questions, it becomes clear that they're less threats for the girl and more things that he's actually concerned about. Who is she going to move on with? Is she going to be okay without him? And this is confirmed when in the last line of the poem, he has to pull himself back and remind himself to be strong. 2 minus 1 ends in a very similar way. As Joshua and Vernon explain,
going through breakup, acting all cool about it,
Right.
but in truth, you know.
It keeps on going like, I don't need you anymore, I'm not lonely, but at the end, the lyrics are, I need you.
That's the only part where, like, we're just fully honest
Right.
about the whole situation.
the song makes such a great comparison. I'm giving it all the points that I can. I added 2 points for specific lyrics, 2 points for themes and emotions, 2 points for sequence, and 2 points for general Catullusness. Our point total is 23. So overall, Attacca has a lot in common with the love narrative in Catullus's poems. There's songs of infatuation, passionate love, longing for a lost love, and then finally a not completely plausible rejection of their love. There's also one other cool thing I want to mention, which is that the last line of the whole album from 2-1 is I need you. And the first line of the album is
I always need you.
that does not seem like it could be a coincidence. And that type of intentional structuring and repetition of themes and ideas is very Catullus. So I'm adding 1 point to general Catullusness for that detail. That gives us a grand total of 24 points. Since this is the first video in a series, we don't really know whether that's going to be a particularly high score. Certainly there are significant differences between 17's album and Catullus's album. You might have noticed that more than half of Catullus 1 through 11 we did not even mention. Attacca is focused solely on romantic relationships, and Catullus is exploring a lot of other themes, in particular friendship. Given that 17 in particular and K-pop groups in general are sort of known for the closeness of their members, I'm actually pretty surprised that we don't get more specific songs dedicated to friendship. So, did I convince you of the connection between this K-pop album and Catullus? Are there other albums you think I should compare? If you'd like to see more in this series, please consider subscribing to the channel. Next up, I think I'm going to do Olivia Rodrigo's Sour, so be sure to come back and check that out. Thanks for watching!